Okay, and here's the cotangent in our graphing review. And like I said before, you need to know the basic idea on these. So the cotangent, normally it also has a period of pi, but the zero is at pi over 2. So when you could derive these using your unit circle values or just table of values. That's how we get these. So you want to be aware of that fact that it's going to look like this, and then this would be the zero is normally over here at pi over 2. It's my little dog, Gable. Okay, and the asymptotes go like this, and it goes downhill. And like I said, we get these by using table of values. I'm not going to go through that again because we already did that in class, but it goes downhill. And if this is 1 and negative 1, then we derive that. Basically, it looks like this. So when we do a shift, we're going to move this whole thing over. All right? So it should look basically like that. That's our cotangent. Okay? So now we've got all this other stuff going on, so we'll take out the... So I'll take out a pi over 4. And what's left is x. I take out the pi. And I divide by 4. Multiply by 4, so I should have 2, I guess. Let's see here. I think that's what it's going to be, but I'm going to check it. So if I multiply this, pi over 4 times x is pi over 4x, and if I multiply this, I get pi. 2 pi over 4 is pi over 2, so it checks out. So I've got a shift of 2. Okay? 2 pi over 4 is pi over 2, so that checks out all right. Okay, so my amp is 1/2. My period is pi over b over pi over 4. So if I multiply the top and the bottom by 4, I get 4 pi over 4, right? Four pi over pi, which is just 4. So my period's 4. Horizontal shift is going to be 2, and vertical is negative 1. Okay? So since my period's 4, that would work out pretty good. Okay. So remember, normally it's like this. The period was 1, so the period's 4, the zero's in the middle. You look over here, the period's pi, the zero's in the middle. So you know the zero's going to be right here. You can always put the values in. So the zero's going to be here, except I've got a shift of negative 1, so I'm going to bring it down here. So this would be where my 0 would be. So my 0 would normally be here, except now I got a shift, don't I? So I've got a shift of 2 to the right, so now I'm going to go out to 6, so now I got to change it a little bit here, 5, 6. So instead of being from 0 to 4, my shift is going to, I'm going to have everything shifted over 2 to the right, so I got a horizontal shift of 2, okay? And remember, the asymptotes are going to be right at the edge of the period. So these would be the asymptotes. Okay? And the zero's in the center. except it's going to go down 1, so my 0 will be here. All right? Okay, so normally it's here. But if it's like this, it's the same as this. This is the period. The 0 is right in the center. Okay? But everything's shifted over 2 to the right and down 1. So that gives me my asymptotes and my period and my vertical shift. All right? So I just have to deal with the amplitude. So put the asymptotes in. Okay. And there's my 0. So this is what we've got. Okay, so my 0, because the period changes a little bit odd, but this is the period. It's in the middle. Everything's shifted over 2, so the 0's in the center, comes down here. All right, and now my amplitude is 1/2, so usually we go in the middle. This is the middle one, so we usually go up a half, but over here it's going to be there, and then down a half. Oops, sorry about that. Right here. Cross this out. Need my white out. Now you can put these numbers in and see, like if I put 3 in here, all right? Let's put 3 in. Then if I put 3 in here, I got 3 pi over 4 minus 3 pi over 2. 3 pi, that's going to be negative pi over 4. Right, if I put a 3 in here, I get 3 pi over 4. O minus pi over 2, which should be pi over 4. The cotangent of pi over 4 is 1. And 1/2 times 1 is 1/2 minus 1/2 is is 1/2. So this is 1. Okay, and let's do it again. 3 pi over 4, if I put an x in there, 3 pi over 4 minus pi over 2 is pi over 4. The cotangent of pi over 4 is 1. 1/2 times 1 is 1/2, minus 1/2 is negative 1/2, so that's about right. See, then we could also get the same thing for the phi. Okay? So those are our other key points. There's our 0, so it's going to go like this. And so it's going to be a little flatter because of that amplitude of being 1/2. It's going to flatten it out a little bit or compress it vertically. There you go. So that's what you got. Okay? And intuitively you know that the middle number in between here, in between the 0 and the asymptote right in the middle, that's usually 1 or negative 1 down, but then because I've got the shift and then I've got a change in the amplitude, it changes these a little bit. Okay, that's what you got there. So that's another tough one. So see if you can figure that out. And if you can handle that, you know, you'll be in pretty good shape.